All thoughts were confused. Vladimir stood in a stupor, looking at his wife, who was pulling a sheet over her body. The flushed Irina looked at the man with her shameless gaze and asked him not to touch her lover, the Mashida with whom Vladimir had caught his wife. Of course, at first the man was seized with anger, but then he realized that it was not worth wasting his nerves because of an unworthy woman. Pain squeezed his heart. Disgust filled every cell of his body. Silently, Vladimir looked at his lover curled up in the corner, who turned out to be quite a young guy. Well, he understood why he looked at the beautiful Irina with the figure of a model, on which Vladimir had spent not a little money. The man did not care how rounded hips and a thin waist his wife, and she always strived for perfection. Vladimir loved his wife, so he did not spare any money for her. At that moment, there was no trace of his feelings for his wife. All the good that he had felt for her had turned into a burning hatred. He did not want to forgive the betrayal, but he did not know how to punish his spouse for what he had done. He didn't want to forgive her, but he couldn't think of a way to punish her husband for what he had done. "I give you 1 hour to pack your things and run away as far away as possible," Vladimir said angrily, "and that I never see either of you again." The man left the room and ordered the guards to make sure that Irina didn't dare take anything unnecessary from the house. Going outside and running into the cleaning lady, Vladimir told her to call the cleaning service and remove everything from the bedroom to the trash, right down to the wallpaper on the walls. After that, the man got into his car and drove wherever he saw fit. Always when Vladimir sat behind the wheel, he took his emotions under control, which helped him not to commit rash acts. Just now, watching the road closely, he calmed down and relaxed. Vladimir drove around the city all night, stopping only once to refuel. Only in the morning, tired of driving, he stopped at a convenience store to buy water and decided to take a walk around the square. There were no people there at this early hour, which pleased the man because no one would distract him from his thoughts. He sat down on the bench and covered his face with his hands. He had never expected that the woman who had been chasing him and swearing her feelings could betray him. And it was not the first time this had happened in his life, and Irina was well aware that Vladimir would be hurt if he found out. He could not understand what Irina was missing. Finally, it became clear to him why the woman did not want children. She only needed Vladimir's money, not her family. "Uncle, please help me." A thin child's voice rushed into his consciousness that made him shudder. Raising his incomprehensible gaze at the girl of unknown origin, Vladimir looked at her carefully. Why was such a small child in the park at that time? His thoughts were confused, and the girl shaking Vladimir's hand reminded him of someone. Although it is possible that he imagined it, since he had not slept all night. "Please help me, my mother is not well," the girl repeated. At that moment, Vladimir seemed to wake up. Abruptly jumping to his feet, he froze for a moment, because it went dark in his eyes, and then asked, Where to go?" He uttered, and only then thought that it looked more like some kind of setup. It seemed to him that the girl was crying sincerely, but what the crooks don't teach children. Vladimir briefly wondered if he should get involved at all. Looking around, he tried to catch sight of anything suspicious, but he did not notice anything and hurried after the girl, crying for his help. When the girl turned into the woods, the man felt a little uncomfortable. Vladimir kept expecting someone to jump out from around the corner with a knife and make him empty his pockets. Now, however, he had nothing to give except his phone. Seeing a woman lying face down on the narrow, trampled path, Vladimir quickened his pace. Of course, even this could have been a plan to steal valuables, but on the other hand, if you go around like this, when someone really needs help, no one will help him. Vladimir tried to stay alert and prepare for any turn of events. Squatting next to the woman, Vladimir touched her. She was breathing, but apparently unconscious. The man jerked his hand away as the woman was hot. Her body temperature was too high. Carefully turning her over onto her back, Vladimir was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that fate had bumped him into this woman after 7 years again. Splashing water on the woman's face, Vladimir tried to bring her to her senses, but she began to shiver from the cold. It was a real fever, not the usual fainting spell. After taking off his jacket and covering the victim with it, the man called an ambulance. "Do you have anyone? Daddy, Grandma, Grandpa? We need to call them to come and get you." A shocked Vladimir asked the girl, "I don't have anyone else, just Mommy. Will she be all right?" The girl asked, sniffling her nose. Of course, I hope she'll be okay. The ambulance doctors quickly examined Tatiana and began to put her on a stretcher. They did not even ask Vladimir what he was to the woman, and he did not even have time to say anything. Only near the car, the paramedic glanced at the little girl. Will the child stay with you? She asked hurriedly. Yes, with me. Vladimir nodded, and only then realized what he had signed up for. The little girl was crying and asked to go with her mother, but Vladimir promised her that he would certainly take her to her mother when she was better. You see, your mother and I used to know each other. It's strange that I'm the one who came across your path, but on the other hand, it's even better. I'll take care of you. The girl looked at Vladimir incredulously, but there was no way he could prove to her that he was telling the truth. But she had no choice but to agree to go with Vladimir. She couldn't be left alone in the park. When Vladimir returned home, he told the housekeeper to get Olia, the girl's name, cleaned up and fed her. He himself collapsed on the couch in the living room to get some rest and fell asleep, waking up a few hours later because someone was standing nearby and sniffling his nose a lot. Vladimir saw Olia in front of him. He immediately remembered everything that had happened and decided to call the hospital to find out about Tatiana's well-being. The doctor said that the woman was found with pneumonia. The temperature was able to bring down, so she was not sent to the intensive care unit. Tatiana constantly asks where and with whom her daughter stayed. She is worried. Vladimir said that he would come to visit her and explain everything himself. Also, the doctor highly recommended not to bring the child, so Vladimir had to justify himself to the girl, although he did not know how to talk to children. I'll leave you a spare phone, and Aunt Sawyer, the janitor, will help you answer my call. I'll show you Mom on the video link, and you'll understand that you can trust me, Vladimir promised. The girl was cranky and didn't believe me. After that, the man began to think that he had kept Olia for nothing, that he had decided in vain to get involved with a woman from the past who had once hurt him. His head was spinning, but the man drank his coffee and managed to pull himself together after all. On the way to the hospital, he was preparing for a serious conversation, but immediately lost the power of speech as soon as he entered the room and faced the surprised gaze of Tatiana. Hello, said the man, taking a seat near Tatiana's bed. I brought some things, fruit, water, balloons. He laughed softly. The doctor said you should exercise your lungs with balloons. How did you ever get yourself into this condition? What are you doing here? Where is my daughter? The tearful woman asked. Olga is at my house, don't worry. I couldn't leave her in the park. At first the conversation did not go well, but when Vladimir called Ola and allowed her and her mother to talk, Tatiana warmed up a little. She said that she had begun to feel sick and strong sweetness about a week ago. The woman thought that it was just normal fatigue and tried to hold on with the last of her strength. There was no way she could stop working because she was earning money to feed her daughter and pay her rent. She always took her daughter to kindergarten before she was supposed to, not to spend money on the bus, so they walked. Tatiana did not really remember how she lost consciousness and was very frightened when she found herself in the hospital and did not see Olia beside her. So why didn't the father pay child support? At least some help would be, Vladimir asked, himself not sure why. Tatiana ignored the question and only thanked for the help. She asked to stop by their apartment to pick up Olia's things and shut off the water. The woman promised that she will definitely repay for kindness when she regained consciousness, and he did not argue with her. Vladimir decided that a little later he would tell Tatiana everything he thought about the nasty thing she had done in the past, say that he had already forgiven her and did not need gratitude. After taking the things Tatiana had asked for and some of Olia's toys, the man returned home. He gave everything to the housekeeper and asked her to keep an eye on Olia because he himself did not know how to behave with the child. During the 2 weeks that Olia lived with him, he unwittingly became close to her. They'd often had dinner together, visited Tatiana in the hospital, went shopping. Thus, little Olia became an integral part of his life. Meanwhile, Irina did not even remind him of herself or try to beg forgiveness. Vladimir remembered that there was still enough money on her bank cards to keep her from remembering her husband. He understood that Irina would soon show up and began to prepare for that meeting. Vladimir was even glad that he had listened to his parents and signed a prenuptial agreement according to which in case of divorce, the property would not be divided. The man did not want what he had earned by his own labor, went to an unfaithful woman. Tatiana was slowly recovering and the doctors began to prepare her for discharge. Vladimir decided to bring Tatiana to his home, where she could rest a little more, because here she would not have to cook and do household chores. Contrary to his fears, Tatiana quickly agreed because she was not yet feeling very well. At the gate of his house, Vladimir ran into Irina, ex-wife, because Vladimir had already had time to file for divorce, began to caress him and ask for forgiveness. She said that nothing is not to blame, and she did not understand how it happened, and that she missed Vladimir. However, when she saw Tatiana, Irina did not faint from shock. "So that's it, you went back to her. So you decided to leave me." The next moment, Olia looked out of the car, and Irina became even angrier. "How did you know about your daughter?" "I did everything to ensure that you never crossed." Vladimir instantly pale when he heard Irina's confession. "Quickly tell me what you did," the man grumbled angrily. "Come on," said Irina and wanted to leave, but Vladimir grabbed her by the arm and made her look into his eyes. "If you do not tell, I will destroy your father's company and you will lose your income. You will be forced to work 2 jobs because you are used to a luxurious life." Irina and Vladimir had known each other since childhood. They grew up together as brother and sister since their families were friends. After Tatiana left Vladimir, he decided to follow his father's advice and marry Irina. Irina wanted to marry Vladimir because his family was wealthy, and when the man decided to propose to his girlfriend Tatiana, offered to practice on her. She made a videotape, which she sent to Tatiana. So Tatiana dumped Vladimir and ran away without letting him explain himself. Irina knew the girl was pregnant, so she asked an acquaintance to make fake photos to convince Vladimir that Tatiana was cheating on him. Gradually, Tatiana and Vladimir were able to forgive each other, and Olia was very surprised to learn that Vladimir was her father. 2 years later, they had a son. Irina's father's firm collapsed without Vladimir's funding, so Irina was forced to start earning her own money.